I prayed this and I got that. I prayed this and I got that. I got to tell you guys, this is going to be a great show. I'm glad to be back. I missed you all, but did you ever pray for this and get that?
Preview.
Todd is not only a remarkable, successful 30-year titan in business with having multiple businesses that generate multiplied millions of dollars.
And if that plan happens to be to build $1 million company, which I can help you do.
But he's humble. He's a man of God. He's a family man.
The world's news organizations are built on everything but positivity.
He is an influential entrepreneur and business speaker for over 30 years.
I've got to forecast. I've got to pronounce. I've got to project. I've got to share with you my ideas, my vision, my goals for not only myself, but for you.
That's why he's came up with his incredible concept of taking and creating a platform for people that are wired differently.
And you got to understand that your habits of your person and your habits of your business and your habits of your spirituality have to lead to the North Star of who you are. We need to figure out who we want to be in life.
Wow. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Anywhere in the world you are, it's Monday, and it's a glorious day. I just beside myself. A lot of you probably expected me to be on at 9 o'clock, and I know Chad did. I know Chris did, and I know the faithful followers. I know you did, right? And so I apologize. But listen, I got a great show for you today. And I got to tell you, it's just one of those days. It's a Monday. And I know we all get up and we have Mondays. I get up early, I do my thing. But this whole last week has been like a blur to me. And so it's kind of apropos that we would have this show and have this type of beginning. But listen, I want you all to know that sometimes we get started slow. Sometimes we don't really get ready to roll. And I'm up for the game all the time. But sometimes we aren't. Sometimes we give it our best, and we're just not really ready. We're just really not like on point, on specific situations. And I think God is really going to work here on me and with you with this message we're going to talk about today, because we're getting into James. We're getting into this whole creation of James and this book of James, Jesus's half brother James, which is technically his name was Jacob. And so the letter of James is a beautiful letter, and it's really talking to me today and talking to you today, because a lot of us just get going differently, right? We do things differently. We get up differently. We go to bed differently. We cry differently. We try differently. We fight differently. We win differently. We lose differently because we're wired differently, right? And James is like, he is the closest to Jesus from a blood perspective, I guess. But he is wired differently. Christ was the first wired differently, dude. And James, all kinds of people follow. You're wired differently. We do things differently. And James is kind of the wired differently book, because James is the book where James, who is really Jacob, but translated into English as James, is the book where he teaches us more about how to use the words of Christ, his half brother, than let's say John and Matthew and Mark and some of these other gospels that were just kind of giving us fresh looks at things. And so this morning, as I kind of struggled around, I was ready. It's just that I realized at the last moment, as I flew in from California, I had not packed my Mac charger, or I left it in San Diego, or I left it in Florida, or I left it in Atlanta. I mean, I've been to so many places over the last 6 days that I have no idea where my charger is. And so when I woke up this morning, I'm like, man, I better just check and see if my Mac is ready to go, because we've had a week. I'm going to give you a little details on my week. I've had a minute, man, I'll tell you. And I didn't have a charger. And as I'm screaming around this morning, thanks, an hour before the show, I decided to check to see if I had a charger, and my Mac was dead, and I had no charger. So I'm calling Abby. Abby calls Walmart. Walmart has no charger, and I call the studio here to see if I had left it here, and they have no charger, and my office has no charger. But Chris rolls up at the last minute and brings me a charger and plugs me in, and literally the computer was so dead that the charger didn't take hold of the computer till like 9:01. And so thanks for hanging in there. How do we use moments like the Chris moment? How do we use moments like what we're doing with Abby, and what we're doing with Heather, and what we're doing with Chris, and we're doing with Chad? How do we use these moments? How do we use these moments to grow us in like the book of James? How do we make the book of James the book of life, right? This book of how do we use these words that God gives us through these books? Specifically with James, because James is, I remember doing a thorough study on James, probably, I'm going to go with 20 years ago. I'm going to go with 20 years ago. So this week, I'm going to dive into it with you, for you, with us. And we're going to say, how do we apply these things? And so the verse I have with you is going to kind of set up this whole idea of pace, the way I see pace for our life, this idea of the way I see the reality of life and how we're to look at life in the pace of life. Because I'm in one of these situations right now where life is changing and I have no control over it. I'm a control guy in some regards. I like to know where my money is. I like to know who I'm spending my money on. I like to be making investments. I like to be making great moves. I like to be planning. I'm a planner, right? And if I coached you, I would talk to you about what's your plan, right? Believe. I'm going to be honest with this. These ear things are wearing me out. Believe, prepare, attack, right? I teach people to believe. And then I teach you to prepare, and then I teach you to execute the plan, right? And so I'm one of these guys, but sometimes, I remember actually putting something in one of my posts, and somebody says, you can't plan for everything. And I remember reading that post. It was not even a week or so ago. It was from, I want to say, somebody from Africa. Very, very good Wire Differently follower, but, she said, I love what you're saying, but you can't plan for everything. So James kind of helps us out with that. And he takes the gospel, he takes what he's learned from Jesus, he takes these words from Proverbs, he takes these words, and in chapter 2 through 12, 2 through 5, he lays out 12 teachings on how to do these things and how to take the word and put it in your life and make it move. So I had a couple stories this morning that kind of really got me moving on this. In the verse James 1:19, it says this, because it sets up all of James and the practical side of Jesus and how he taught him. You see, Jesus was Christ's half brother, and Jesus basically passed on the Jerusalem church to James. And James had Jerusalem church for maybe 20 years. These are some things I didn't know. But as he worked through that church, he had a lot of strife. He had a lot of problems. He had economic problems. He had village problems. He had leadership problems. But he was always steady for that community until he was murdered somewhere around his 20th year leading that church. But in those 20 years that he was leading that church, he spread the mechanical side, if you will, of Jesus's teaching. He wasn't really introducing anything new. He was just saying, how do we use what Christ has said to us? How do we use him in our life? How do we take these words and make us functional with God's words? So it's going to be fun, I think, this month as we dive through James and we break down real world things that come to task for us in the book of James, the letter of James. But James starts with James 1:19 is what brought me to this today, was, my dear brother and sister, take note of this, right? We talked about this in the past. Anytime God says, and then this, or take note of this, or the word therefore, we better pay attention. So my dear brother and sister, take note of this. Therefore this. Pay attention now, because I'm going to tell you something super good, super cool. Then this, therefore this. Here we go, my dear brother and sisters. Take note of this. everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. In this whole week, I want to just confess something. I have not been vigilant in my Bible studies. I want to confess that as I've been traveling and dealing with my parental challenges and my father and his dementia and the change of life and so much going on in that regards, that it just, I don't want to say it slipped away from me. It was that I had a week in San Antonio with San Diego with Pray.com. I took Chad with me. It was a great, great trip. Actually, the promo pic for this show was me and Chad in the mountains in San Diego. We were shooting weapons with Navy SEALs and CIA Mountain. It was crazy. They damn near blindfolded us to take us up to this shooting range. We took these vans that weren't made to go up the mountains, but we went through the mountains, and it was really, really bizarre. The secrecy and how to get to these shooting ranges. And when we got there, the Navy SEAL were there, and 3 or 4 of them, and they had all these shooting ranges set up. It was really spectacular. But as we got up there, there was lots of commotion, lots of nerves. I mean, big weapons, rifles, sniper rifles, handguns. I mean, it was just, it was, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain this earpiece either. One moment. Let's see if we can get this guy to work, because it is annoying me. So as we were moving through the mountains and doing what we were doing, it was a great time. I sat with Chad, I sat with other people, and we told stories, and we did this, we did that, we prayed for this, then we got that. And so this whole story, this whole setup for today's show is sometimes we just need to understand, what are we praying for? Why are we praying? And is praying, someone asked me once, is praying more important than studying? And so as I talk through this and I think through this and I think through, I did take some time off from my scripture, but I found myself praying more this week than I've ever prayed before. And so it leads up to this show today and how we're talking about it. And then God drops this verse on me: my dear brother and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. So I have this story going to the Black Ops Mountain. I have this story of, rolling into San Diego and flights being almost missed, this and that, things going on. I have this story of this whole week while I'm just leaving my father and jumping on a plane. He decides to, unfortunately, take the final steps into dementia. And, it's clear that we have to put him in a facility. And I'm literally, 7 states away, 5 hours on a flight, and I couldn't turn the plane around. And so I knew that we had to do all this stuff from a phone, from Black Ops, CIA Mountain, from Navy SEALs, and trying to do Pray.com. And I'm only going there to rest, right? A pastoral's retreat. I'm only going there to have what they have for us, to celebrate the fact that we want to love God. We want to worship God. We want to do these things. And I'm only doing these things. And all I can do is worry about my father. And then the guy comes up and he sets us all up before we take off for the 3-day excursion. He says, listen, this is the 3 days that you're not supposed to worry. And I'm like, how can you say this when you know that everything in front of me is a worry to me? My financial situation, my father's situation, my father's wife's situation, my mother's situation, my wife's parents' situation. The donut capital of the world needs to get started. Pay serves doing these things and everything I want to do, every place I want to go. I just want to be quiet for 3 days. And what I do is get a phone call that your father has to go to the hospital for good, right? And so all these things are coming up on me. They're percolating up on me. They're procrastinating for me. They're like saying, what you cannot do is save and rejoice in the Lord. You have to worry, because I know that's what you're trying to do, is not worry. But God didn't allow this to happen. But Satan puts his position into me and he says, you better worry, damn it. You better worry. because nothing's going to get done if you don't worry. But I remember Ricky just saying, these 3 days, don't worry, pray. So for those 3 days, I prayed. For those 3 days, I hung out with pray.com. For those 3 days, I went to the mountains and shot weapons. Those 3 days, we went and had coffee. We had meetings. We had speakers. We had great times. We had dinners. We had an amazing time. And for most of it, I wasn't worried. Until I got this phone call.
Preview.
Todd is not only a remarkable, successful 30-year titan in business with having multiple businesses that generate multiplied millions of dollars.
And if that plan happens to be to build $1 million company, which I can help you do,
But he's humble. He's a man of God. He's a family man.
The world's news organizations are built on everything but positivity.
He is an influential entrepreneur and business speaker for over 30 years.
I've got to forecast. I've got to pronounce. I've got to project. I've got to share with you my ideas, my vision, my goals for not only myself, but for you.
That's why he's came up with his incredible concept of taking and creating a platform for people that are wired differently.
And you got to understand that your habits of your person and your habits of your business and your habits of your spirituality have to lead to the North Star of who you are. We need to figure out who we want to be in life.
We need to figure out who we want to be in life. We need to figure out how to work these headsets. I got to tell you, I want to talk to you about James 1:19. My dear brother and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And so as I'm out there and I'm going through all these things with chat, I'm going through all these things with pray.com, and we're trying to have some rest, we're having some peace. The phone call comes in. Literally one day before I'm going to be able to take a normal flight back to Florida, have literally 2 days with my wife, and then come back to Indiana and deal with the planned on move. But you just couldn't wait. The worry couldn't wait. The time couldn't wait. Nothing could wait. It was just one of those situations where this is what we were going to do, and this is how it was going to happen, and we did it. But the phone call came, and it was from my father and his wife's handler or caretaker. And it was, we're going to have to call the police. We're going to have to call the police. Your father's too much to handle. I mean, what are you talking about? I'm in San Diego. I mean, how can it get to this point where I'm literally 2 days away from the finish line, not worrying, really not even studying, but praying and listening to other teachers? And you're telling me that my father is going to have to be hauled off? No, man. This is not right. I didn't worry, though. I calmly said, stay here for a moment. Just relax. Let me think about this and let me pray. I hung up the phone. And despite what Satan wanted me to do, I didn't. I prayed. I prayed for his healing, and I prayed for a solution. So basically, we separated the two. We found a place for his wife to go that was safe, and I found a person that could come stay the night with him. And I switched my flight, called my wife and said, I'm not coming to Florida. I'm going to be in Atlanta tomorrow at noon. Can you get a flight and meet me in Atlanta? It was a beautiful thing. I got to see my wife in Atlanta at noon the very next day. The plan that I prayed for was working. I prayed that the problem would be solved. I prayed that he would be healing, and I prayed that he would feel better. I prayed that all this. This is what I prayed for, right? the functional side of what James is telling us to do is not to be quick to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And for once, I actually listened to what God was telling me. And I literally did all I could do not to worry, to push back Satan's directive that I should worry because my world's falling apart, because the financial side of things, the relationship side of things, the logistical side of things, all of these things are in play. And my mind is spinning and spinning and spinning. How is this all going to happen? As I fly back, I'm so happy to rejoice with my wife in Atlanta. We hook up in Atlanta. I give her a small kiss. I'm still on the phone. We grab the next flight and we're in Angola that night around 7 p.m. And for the next 2 days, I stayed up with my father as he roamed the home and the hallways, confused and dismayed. But nobody was arrested. I prayed for the healing. I prayed for not the worry. I prayed for the solution, right? This is what I prayed for. I prayed this, but got that. I prayed this, but got that. And what I'm going to tell you in the last 8 minutes or so of the story is what I got from what I prayed for. You see, because the name of this show today is I prayed for this, but I got that. And I think that we all need to understand from the book of James, as I pull this together, I want you to understand my job is to grow you personally, spiritually, and profitably. And sometimes the word profitably must be translated into fruitfully. And what I'm telling you comes from the study of the word of God. And when I come from, even more importantly, when you combine the study of the word of God and you combine it with the prayer in your life, you will get fruitful results. Fruitful results. I prayed for healing. I prayed for solutions, but when I got there, I got a mess. I got 48 hours of wandering, stumbling, dementia that I've never seen the likes of in my life. I got a situation where I just can't even keep my emotions dry. I got a situation where I've got to toe the line for 14 companies and all the family members and all this going on. I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty here. I'm just saying this is where we are sometimes. The last night I stayed up with you all night. We had literally, I logged the night. I mean, I wish I could show it. Maybe I will. Everything I went through. And I woke up that morning. It was a Saturday morning at 1:40 because he burst into the door, at 2:30 because he burst into the door, at 3:15 because he burst into the door, at 4 o'clock because he got loose and left the house and cut up his leg, and at 6 o'clock and at 7 o'clock, and it just never ended. And finally I said to myself, let's start packing. And so I just started to pack all of his stuff, pack, load the car. He was going to the hospital. He was going to the community that we had picked out and we laid the plans for, that we didn't worry about, that we prayed for, right? And when I finally got him there, he was upset and he felt I was tricking him. And I took him into the home and we got there and I thought he was really going to wrestle me. I prayed for all of this to go better than this. I prayed for peace. I prayed for healing. I prayed for this, but got that. What is that? Well, what happens is he finally gets out of the car. They usher him into the home. He's finally starting to smile. He literally, maybe tomorrow I can be better prepared and I could show you some videos. He literally walks into this community, which is beautiful, and immediately starts dancing with some of the nurses. But what I want to tell you, though, on day 2 of him being there is what I didn't expect to get. Because I prayed for this and got that. I prayed for the dancing. I prayed for the peace. I prayed for the happiness. I prayed for the calmness. But what I didn't expect to get was that. What I got was a text message. And that text message was amazing. And the text message said, Todd, this was this morning after 2 days of getting my dad acclimated to memory care in a dementia unit. If any of you have ever been through that, you know what those units can look like. This doesn't look like that. It's amazing. But what I prayed for was healing, calmness, and peace, which I got. But more importantly, I got that. And the text message I got was this from a nice lady by the name of Adiah. And when I realized my father was here and I looked at the room across the way from where he was staying, there was an old friend of his who had been deceased's wife. Let's call her Diane. And for the 2 days I was coming back and forth and getting things moved in, I would knock on her door and no answer, no answer, no answer. Just wanted to see her. I knew her as a child, and her son worked for me at Tom's Donuts, and I knew her husband. Let's call him Tim. And he was my dad's best friend. I just wanted to see her, right? 2 days, nothing. And on the last day, yesterday, when I was leaving, I saw her in the cafeteria. I mean, she'd been there all the time, going in and out, but I didn't notice her because she had changed so much. She couldn't walk. She was laying and not communicating, and she was just in a position of mercy, right? And on the way out, I kind of said, hello, my name is Todd. Do you remember me? And she put some type of words together, but she smiled and kind of took it that maybe she did or maybe she didn't. And I said, my father is Tom Saylor. And her eyes got very big. And I said, he's here. He's across the room from you. And I gave her some encouragement, and not knowing if anything had happened, I moved my way out of the facility quickly because it's sad to leave your parents. But the text message I got this last evening before Tracy and I went to bed was the worker at this astral facility. Texted us and said, I don't understand it, but since your father's here, the energy's changed here. The people are different here. Especially Diane. Diane hasn't been eating. Diane hasn't been trying to move around. Diane has changed. I prayed for this and got that. My dear brother and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Well, you say, Ty, well, what's that got to do with this story? It's a beautiful story. I'm glad you told me. Well, what I want to tell you is I want to go back to James. I want to go back to this idea of taking God's words and literally using them and fine-tuning them and listening to them, and actually making them practical in life. Because there were so many times I was so angry with my father because I didn't understand the mess. I didn't understand the test. I didn't understand the progress. I didn't understand anything of it. And so I literally prayed for peace. I prayed for wisdom, but I got that, which was the very community that I was so angry about having to put my father through, that I fought for years and years and years. Is literally somebody else's win, somebody else's salvation, somebody else's place, somebody else's prayer being answered through my prayers of one thing of this and giving me that. You know, God's just really smart. And I'm sorry for being angry with you, God. I'm sorry for being angry with the whole damn thing, right? But I can't help it. I wasn't listening. And I was quick to anger, and I was quick to speak and feel. The emotions are speaking. Emotions are those things. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. And I'm going to close this today. And I want you to understand, if I take the converse of James's chapter 1, verse 19, the converse of quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger, it all comes together. So I'm going to flip these around. So everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Or could we also say the converse, right? Jacob or James could say, my dear brother and sister, take note of this. Everyone should be slow to speak, quick to hear, and quick to joy. See, that verse that speaks to me about this thing I'm being tested with right now with my family and my father and my businesses and everything that's going on is that I hear quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. But here's what I really want you to hear today. I want you to hear this. I want you to take the converse of this verse. I want you to flip it on its head. And I want you to hear me say this. I want you to be slow to speak. I want you to be quick to hear. In this last piece, James is saying, I want you to be quick to see the joy. Meaning that in adversity and these things that are going on in my life and your life, I want you to flip the script and I want you to be quick to see joy, quick to hear, and slow to speak. The thing that's really missing in the converse is I took the word slow to anger and flipped it. That's the exact same thing as saying quick to joy. Because if we go quick to listen, that means we're slow to speak. If we go slow to speak, that means we're quick to hear, right? He's saying the same thing. But here's the other one. The last one is slow to anger. Please, James says in 1:19, slow to anger. I'm flipping it and I'm challenging you today to say, I want you to not only be slow to anger, but I want you to be quick to joy. The opposite of slow is quick. The opposite of anger is joy. See, I was not quick to joy. I'm there now, man. Because I prayed for this and got that. All right, my friends, get to wiredifferently.com. That's wiredifferently.com. Get shirts like this. Get your favorite catchphrase. I'm going to have a new backboard for you, or new background for you tomorrow. We're going to have some new shirts to feature. So many cool things that we're slowly developing on wiredifferently.com. We're going to be picking that up. I go to wiredifferently.com. Get your favorite Wired Differently shirt, your favorite Christian tagline. What do you want to represent? This is your jersey for Jesus. We want you to understand that we need to show our faith. We need to show the world that we are wired differently. We are misfits. We are not like the rest of these people zombieing around in this world. We are using Christ to build our life, and that we are quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Appreciate all your support. I'll see you tomorrow night.